as everyone knows, the 2003 Stanley Cup was won by the New Jersey Devils. Crap. All right. I accidentally hit the wrong button down here, but it's still recording, so we're going to leave it.
Right, because you have battery.
We're going to leave it. Because that's the kind of guy I am. As everyone knows, stop it. As everyone knows, the 2003 Stanley Cup was won by the New Jersey Devils. I understand there was somebody else sitting here earlier who looked a lot like me, who said it was the Detroit Red Wings. They were, of course, swept in the first round that year by the Anaheim Ducks. And I remember cheering really loud when that happened. Yes, I cheered for the Ducks when that happened. Would you stop? It's obnoxious. So the Ducks swept Detroit, and an interesting thing happened that year. So Jersey wins the Stanley Cup. I know, I got her. And they did it without any kind of a dominating roster either. Their top scorer, Patrick Elias, 57 points. 57 points. Those are numbers you'd see now. Langenbrunner, 55. Gomez, 55. Jeff Friesen with 51. Nieuwendyk, which I spelled wrong. That was on purpose, just to make sure you people are paying attention. All right. I'd better at least spell check myself. The Nieuwendyk has a U right in here. Right, whatever. John Madden, 41 points. Rafalski had 40 points, and Niedermayer had 39. Then in the playoffs, Langenbrunner with 18 points, 11 goals. Jamie Langenbrunner is one of my favorite players of all time. I'm just throwing that out there now. Jamie Langenbrunner, for name alone, and the fact that he was so damn good at everything he did. One of my favorite players. Scott Niedermayer, 18 points. 16 of those points were assists. Madden with 16 points. Friesen with 14, 10 of them goals. Elias had 13. Jay Pandolfo was the story of those playoffs with 12 points. 6 goals. Jay Pandolfo, not before or after did he show that kind of offensive acumen. Just amazing. And Scott Gomez with 12 points. The Conn Smythe is an interesting issue. So this is something that, to me anyways, was part of Berdeur's career. Brodeur gets 16-8 record, a 1.65 goals against, and a .934 save percentage. He should have been the Conn Smythe winner. This would have been Marty Brodeur's Conn Smythe trophy. He would have been MVP. It was his first Vezina that year. He had never won the Vezina trophy until 2003. And Devils fans everywhere rejoiced when he finally won it because he'd been robbed a couple of times. Sort of like other goalies were robbed when he was at the top. For whatever reason, it happens. Your first actual trophy is usually your hardest to get. After that, it seems to get easier with the voters. J.S. Giguère gets the Conn Smythe. He's 15-6, 1.62 goals against, and a .945 save percentage. John Sebastian Giguère played out of his mind that spring. And it kind of gets forgotten. It was good, too, that he eventually won a Stanley Cup. I didn't cheer for Anaheim by the time they won a Stanley Cup. But I was glad he won it because there was a perception that was a fluke. It is rare that a losing goaltender gets that award. I'll talk about that when we get to the 1987 Stanley Cup final in the finalists series, which I didn't have the time for today, but it is still on my radar. Boston loses in 5. Tampa loses in 5. Ottawa loses in 7. And Anaheim loses in 7. The interesting thing about this run by New Jersey is Boston's an original 6 team. The next 3 teams they beat were all 1990s expansion teams. I always thought that was weird, that they went through Tampa, Ottawa, Anaheim. The only thing missing on here is Florida or San Jose. That'd have to have been Florida, because San Jose is in the West. That would have made this the wackiest looking chart and all. And the funny thing is, they dispatched Boston in 5 and Tampa in 5. They would both go on to win Stanley Cups. Ottawa took 7. And then Anaheim took 7. Anaheim would win a Stanley Cup. The only team that didn't, that they played, is Ottawa. Which is part of the reason why when somebody says, well, they lost in 7, so they did really well, so next year should be really good. I don't take any stock in that. I don't look and go, well, they lost in 7, so next year they'll be better. Not necessarily. Although Ottawa would end up facing Anaheim. So, 1990s expansion was a good, solid expansion. This is why when people say, well, Vegas is never going to be anything, I go, I don't know. Just because Nashville didn't get to the final till this year and Minnesota and Columbus haven't been there, doesn't mean they won't get there. This was a team that played a very smart defensive game, of course. They had Pat Burns for their coach. Pat Burns is a coach who wore out his welcome in numerous cities, but before he wore out his welcome, he usually won the Jack Adams. At least that's how I remember it. The fact that Pat Burns wasn't put in the Hall of Fame until he passed away is criminal. Should be criminal. I don't understand it either. It's not something I've ever been able to grasp, that he is held out until after he passed away, especially when there was such a public outcry for at least 2 years before that Pat Burns should be in the Hall of Fame. I've been asked as well, should Elias be in the Hall of Fame? Sure. You're going to put Patrick Elias in the Hall of Fame, I don't have a problem with it. Do I think he'll get there? It's borderline. It depends on what they go by. Because he was very good in the playoffs that year, but he wasn't a candidate for MVP. He had 3 goals, 12 points. Respectable in 24 games. Niedermayer, of course, is in the Hall. Nieuwendyke's in the Hall with the U that I forgot initially. Gomez would have been a Hall of Famer if his career hadn't fallen off a cliff when he signed with the Rangers. And Langenbrunner, never going to be a Hall of Famer for anybody else, but for me, absolutely. Will you stop? Sorry, the printer keeps going off. And I don't understand why. It should have just gone to sleep by now. Probably just did.
Now, yeah,
Stop
now
it.
I went to sleep.
Your printer's weird, sweetie.
It's not weird. It had to restart because somebody turned the power off. And
Well, who was the idiot that put the power bar at my feet?
I don't know. Who could it possibly have been?
Okay.
It's
That
a
aside.
mystery.
See, every time you say it like that, I think of Zaboomafoo.
Huh.
Stop it. So, in my mind, in terms of Stanley Cup wins, you've got 95, which was the Trap Takes Over Hockey. You have 2000, which was a very spirited bunch. This one, for me, was the most impressive. This one really kind of came out of nowhere. This was the one that I don't think anybody expected. 95, you could kind of see it coming because of what happened the year before. And 2000, sure. This one was a surprise. And it's even funny, too, because it's mentioned here. Interview with Marty Brodeur. He says, nobody talks about a dynasty until the dynasty's over. Until we're finished winning, there's no use in talking about this team's legacy. And I'm not sure what the Devils' legacy is. It's not a dynasty. They had 3 cups in 9 years, but it's not a dynasty. It says here, though, too, and there is no reason to believe the Devils are finished winning. Their 3rd championship in 9 years was done in a familiar manner, with an emphasis on defense and one of the game's all-time greatest goaltenders. While other franchises may spend off-seasons trying to sign top-name scorers, the Devils once again look to replenish their roster from within. And they were never a huge spender. They lost Arnott before this season, they lost Holik, and they lost Randy McKay. And all they did was win a Stanley Cup. That's pretty impressive. That they shed those players, and they still ended up being good enough. It was impressive to watch. Their salaries went up in 02-03 to just over $50 million. They were a little bit over league average, but up until that year, they were at or below league average for 5 years. There's a 5-year scan right in here. And they just didn't pay everybody. They were very selective about who got paid and what they got paid. And they stood firm. I kind of miss that with GMs now. It just seems like GMs are so desperate to keep everybody together that they sign these 6-8 year contracts, and it's just crazy. And then this was the end of it, and their departures after this cup were Tommy Albaline, Ken Danico, Jim McKenzie, Joe Nieuwendyk, Richard Smelik, and Oleg Tverdovsky. Nieuwendyk and Danico were the ones that made a difference. Absolutely. Danico had just been Mr. Devil the whole way through. I mean, Scott Stevens kind of gets that too, but not as much. And Smelik only played 12 games in the regular season and only 5 in the postseason, so he wasn't a huge loss. Tverdovsky, 13 points in 50 games, and in the playoffs he only played 15 games. He was a -4 and he had 3 points. He was on his way down at that point. But the interesting thing is, there's Jay Pandolfo. He had 17 points in 68 games in the regular season, and then he had 12 in 24 in the playoffs. And he was a +9. Scott Stevens, 20 points in 81 games in the regular season, 9 points in 24 games in the postseason, and he was a +14. And he'd been a +18 during the regular season. So Stevens, again, a Warrior, not on the score sheet as much, but still there. And it was one hell of a run. It really was. We are now almost up to the salary cap, and you'll notice different teams are winning the cup all the time. So I do intend to go through and discuss the salary cap more in depth soon. But for tonight, this is your Devils. This is 2003. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Was this the best of the 3 teams that they put together? I think the best team was the 2000 team. This was the most impressive run. Again, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. And thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you again tomorrow.